My name is Lydia Gallagher, and I grew up on the Cattaraugus Indian Reservation. I moved off territory when I was 18 to go to college at Fredonia for biology. That was not what I have a degree, but I've not actually used it, but that's okay. I still had a great college experience. I came back, but I've worked at the clinic in the dental office. I worked there off and on for 14 years, in addition to working for private offices all around Western New York. Turns out I am creative and I was an entrepreneur at heart. So with science, everything is very straightforward and linear and mathematical. And apparently that's not how my brain works. Depression. I went through a couple of years where I was really struggling. I thought that I didn't think I was very smart. The way that the school system teaches and the way that I learn was very disconnected. I see that now, looking back. So I didn't think I was cut out for academia, and I hated school. I loved the social side of it, meeting new people, you know, the different cultures, the diversity of worldly experiences, so to speak, because I was also traveling during that time. And but when it came to the academia part of it, I just felt very discouraged. And so then I ended up going into construction cost estimating for the Seneca construction. Very, very different angle. I loved who I was working with, but then the team ended up dispersing and they went to different projects, and as a result I was left behind, so to speak, and that was a really rough time because I felt like I didn't feel purpose at all. It wasn't a match for my energy, and so as a result I struggled, and definitely going through depression was a pivotal part. And then I made a phone call from an ad I saw on Craigslist and it was for some multi-level marketing business, but I was so hungry for the experience of getting outside of the space that I was in, headspace and literal space. I made that phone call and spoke to a woman in Florida, and she planted the seed of, what if I did my own thing? What if I worked for myself? And it sounded great because the whole typical road that I was going down, professionally speaking, wasn't fitting. And I was really struggling. So I'm grateful for the time that I felt depressed. I'm a really passionate person. I have a lot of energy. And if I'm going to be depressed, I'm going to be the most passionate, best depressed person there is. And that was not the kind of experience I wanted to have. So as a result, I signed up for the company. Did not end up making any money for the company, but it did its job. It planted that seed, it watered it, and I realized I really had to work on my mindset and make some really massive shifts in my life. And so that ended up leading to my first business, which was making jewelry. And I look back now and I think, wow, people bought a lot of plastic from me because I wasn't very good at it at the time. But that was something I had enjoyed because when I was a teenager, my mom and I learned how to do beadwork. So I really enjoyed the process of making something out of, nothing. And after that process, I decided, well, let's join up. So I started the business with my sister, and I had a grand opening party at my sister-in-law's house, and I walked out with $1,000 in my hand from jewelry that was really cheaply made. And that was my aha light bulb moment of realizing there's something here for me. And that was where my business entrepreneurship started. It is vitally important. And I think when it comes to culture, it really is, there's a backbone to it, but then there's a lot of fluidity in terms of identification, and that process is constantly evolving. It's constantly evolving for me. So, and when I did a photo series that I called my Sacred Series, that was a really pivotal point for me to be able to come back to understanding what was traditional, what was cultural for me, because I grew up in a really unique situation that I've only realized now just how unique it was, because I was born and raised in a Christian home. And being Christian on an Indian reservation is not popular and also puts a target on your back. But I'm grateful for those experiences because it really taught me a lot about myself. I've now looked back and see what was nature and what was nurture. And I loved my childhood, and I was raised in a home that was abundant in love. And that is, I can't talk about who I am without talking about my parents. That is 100%. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love and cherish my parents. They raised us the way that they did, and we knew that we were different. And I realize now how important that skill set, I'll call it a skill set because I don't think that it's inherent all the time. When I was 18, my dad sat me down and he said, "Your mom and I have taught you everything we believe to be right and true, but go find out for yourself." And so they gave us permission to fail. And we did a lot. I still do. But we always knew that we had a safe place to come back to. And that has been the core of our family experience. And as a result, the other thing that they taught us was to be curious and to ask questions. And so I grew up going to parts of Buffalo that I realize now was not common. And, there was a really great art school in Buffalo called the Locust Street Art School, right next to the Roswell Cancer Institute. And we would go there, and that's where I learned photography. And we would paint and we'd draw and we would, be creative because my grandmother was in the hospital and she was sick. So my parents would drop us off there and we would just go create in the school. I have vivid memories and very colorful memories of what it was like going to this school with people who were very, very different than us. And I loved that. And now that's my home, is in that space. So being curious, I think asking questions and being really genuine, I think are the core values that, I got from my parents. And that's been the core of everything that I do, creatively and as a business. I am a photographer and I am a business coach. So I pour a lot of energy into other people in both aspects because as a photographer, I started in photography in film. So I learned 35 millimeter. I was in the darkroom with black and white film. I was developing, and I have some of the most incredible memories because the only thing that was off limits talking about in the darkroom was politics and religion. Everything else was fair game, but those are the two things you didn't talk about in the darkroom. And you'd have to know the man who led the darkroom, that he was such a unique and awesome character, and he's no longer with us now. I miss him. But that was where I spent a lot of my time and really got to know people, and the smell of the chemicals, all that kind of stuff is very nostalgic for me. But then I started picking up a camera and I took it to Facebook in 2009 and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting this business. And so I need people who are willing to get in front of the camera. And when something's for free, people will take you up on that." So I just started practicing. And the biggest, most important aspect that I'm so grateful for is right at the beginning, I hired a mentor. I have been working with a mentor, a counselor, a coach for all going on 14 years now that I've been a business owner as a photographer. So much so that I became one. Because when you get so much poured into you, it's got to go somewhere. And I think that's our responsibility. So I hired a mentor and I just started shoving all my stuff in front of him and had an open mind and was willing to be critiqued and was hungry to learn. So that was where I started it. I always say I may not have been fit for academia and the traditional school experience, but I created my own university. And I have paid a lot of money over the last decade plus to have people show me my blind spots and where I needed to improve in the parts of myself I couldn't see. I think in the biggest aspect that mentorship or a counselor or a coach or a mental health provider, whatever that looks like, whatever the need is, I think where you see the biggest impact in hiring someone like that is in time. So can you do so many things on your own? Absolutely. You know, I think that we are all very capable. I think that you can learn almost any skill set, but you can cut that time in half if you bring someone who is specifically going to teach you something very specific in a specific amount of time. So that aspect has been the biggest game changer for me. I hired a few years ago, I hired a multimillionaire coach, business coach. I canceled my life for 2 months. So for 8 weeks, I did not go out to dinner. I did not turn on the TV. I completely shut everything out, and I poured myself completely into that program. And I came out a different person. And that's the goal. And I feel that way about working with a mentor, working with a coach. I feel that way about traveling. I feel that way about relationships. Another aspect of something my parents taught was, you know, if you know the principle, leave a place better than when you found it. I feel that way about people. So I've had a lot of life-changing conversations in airports next to, you know, or sitting next to the person on the plane next to me, in New York subway. I mean, I've met people all over the place, and I think that we all have something to share and something to learn, and that kind of mentality has completely been bountiful in my life. It has brought more to me than I ever could have brought myself. I hope to share that fear and healing is our great foundation. It's a great foundation to build that relationship with self, because we all have our experiences, we all have our identity shifts, and we all have our challenges, some more unique than others. And I think that it's our responsibility. I think it's within our feminine power, whatever that means to an individual. I think it's important to grow, invest, and protect that part of yourself. And as I said before, it's an ever-evolving journey, and I'm excited for mine. It's been pretty great so far. And my identity has shifted from, you know, when I was young, my dad taught us, girls anyway, I have a sister, he taught us as young women, you know, marriage and family is going to be the greatest adventure you're ever going to do, but don't wait for someone to live your life. And so we didn't. But then I was in my mid-30s, and I'm like, wait, am I too independent? You know, and then I met my husband and had a total freak out. That completely changed my life. I was prepared to live my life single and happy and fulfilled, which I was. But then meeting my husband was a game changer. But when I say that my parents really had such a deep impact on who I am as a woman, it's also because I'm a product of a very loving marriage. So I valued marriage. So I waited a long time to do it. And I was 38 when I got married, and it's been the best decision. So now carrying forward isn't just, I think it's twofold, that carrying that legacy forward is not only in my own family someday growing, but it's also in the next generation of entrepreneurship, especially for our communities. Our Indigenous communities are going through so much right now. There's a lot of grieving that's happening. There's a lot of disconnects, and there's a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of voices that have yet to be heard, and we need a safe place. We need a platform for that to be free for expression. And one avenue, well, two avenues that I'm working towards that is working more with minority businesses, as well as bringing photography to communities in a way that I haven't been able to experience yet, and that's slowly happening, which I'm really excited about. I honor my journey first and foremost with staying connected with myself, because the classic airplane example, you can't help another person until you help yourself. What that means to me is deeply personal, and also I'm free to share that. I'm a pretty open book. But then gaining skill sets myself to then pass on to other people. I think that there is a lot that is innate in our personalities and to our tribes that's really important to identify that, and it all sounds great, you know, when you say it, or it's a Pinterest quote, or, you know, something you read in a book or a Facebook post. I think it's quite different to know what does that practical application look like. And that's where mentorship and things like that come into play, because then that's real life. It's one thing to be inspired and to be filled with hope and to be in the healing process, I think is so important. It is quite another to then go back out into the world, into your job, into your relationships in your life, into your habits of your lifestyle, and actually change those things. And I think the even stronger word is to transform those things, because we're not putting lipstick on a pig. We're really looking to completely alter the DNA of, our people moving forward.